What if the most dangerous border crossing in America isn't guarded by walls, cameras, or agents because it isn't on the surface at all? On May 17, 1990, a routine DEA raid on a dusty ranch house in Agua Prieta, Mexico, stumbled into a discovery that would quietly rewrite the rules of border security forever. Agents tore through the house with growing frustration, convinced something was hidden there, but unable to find drugs, cash, or weapons. Then, almost by accident, a thirsty agent turned on a water spigot outside. The house groaned. Not plumbing, not wood. The floor itself shifted. Hidden hydraulic pistons activated beneath the concrete slab, and a pool table began to rise slowly, deliberately, like a trapdoor in a magician's act. Beneath it opened a black shaft descending into the earth. What the agents found below was not a stash or an escape hatch, but a fully engineered underground corridor nearly 300 feet long, reinforced with poured concrete, lit by electricity, cooled by air conditioning, and fitted with steel rail tracks designed to move tons of cargo in silence. This was not improvisation. This was infrastructure. In that moment, the agents believed they had uncovered a clever smuggling trick. They hadn't. They had just witnessed the birth of a new strategy, one that would exploit a blind spot no wall could fix and no sensor could reliably see. That rising pool table did more than reveal a tunnel. It exposed a fatal assumption at the heart of modern border defense, that control above ground meant control, period. What lay beneath that ranch house wasn't just darkness, it was a future no one was prepared for. The tunnel beneath Agua Prieta was not an act of desperation. And it was not a clever trick pulled off by smugglers improvising in the dark. It was something far more unsettling, a business model. The man behind it was 33 years old, largely unknown outside trafficking circles, years away from becoming a global symbol. But within the supply chain, his reputation was already solid. Product moved through his network so fast that intermediaries joked it barely existed in transit. Speed was not about trucks or routes anymore. It was about erasing exposure entirely. The tunnel achieved that. For 7 months, it functioned as a private artery beneath the U.S.-Mexico border, moving roughly 30 tons of cocaine north without a single border agent ever seeing it. No checkpoints, no paperwork, no risk of interception. The drugs didn't cross the border, they bypassed it. What made this tunnel different was not just its scale, but its intent. It had been designed from the start to operate continuously, quietly, and indefinitely. Reinforced concrete walls weren't there to hide, they were there to last. Rail tracks weren't a convenience, they were an efficiency upgrade. Air conditioning wasn't luxury, it preserved millions of dollars in product. Every feature pointed to planning capital and professional oversight. Investigators later learned that an architect with experience designing hidden passages for cartel leaders had overseen construction, aligning shafts, with precision installing hydraulic lifts, and ensuring the tunnel stayed perfectly level as it crossed an international boundary underground. This wasn't crime as chaos. This was crime as engineering. And engineering demands silence. 14 laborers who dug the passage were later found buried in shallow graves in the desert, murdered not out of rage but policy. Witnesses were liabilities. Loose ends were unacceptable. The tunnel's success sent a message far louder than any gunshot. Borders could be neutralized without confrontation. When U.S. authorities filled the passage with concrete and declared victory, the damage was already done. The lesson had been learned, documented, and internalized by the cartel world. If fences rise, go deeper. If cameras multiply, disappear beneath them. The Agua Prieta tunnel was never meant to be the last of its kind. It was meant to prove that the surface war was optional and that the real contest would be decided where no one was looking. In the aftermath of the Agua Prieta discovery, American authorities reached for the tool they trusted most: technology. The logic felt airtight. If modern sensors could detect buried water pipes, power lines, and archaeological ruins, surely they could expose a tunnel large enough to move trucks worth of narcotics. On whiteboards and in briefing rooms, the problem seemed solvable. In the dirt along the border, it wasn't. Ground-penetrating radar was the first great hope. In theory, it sends electromagnetic pulses into the earth and reads the echoes, mapping voids like X-rays for soil. In practice, the border is geological chaos. Layers of rock, clay, pocket sand, ancient river deposits, each reflected signals differently, producing a blizzard of false shapes. The screens filled with noise. Shallow tunnels sometimes appeared, but the cartels noticed immediately. They simply dug deeper. At 30 feet, radar struggled. At 60 or 70 feet, it went blind. Seismic sensors followed, designed to listen for vibrations from digging. But the border is not a quiet place. 18-wheelers thunder past day and night. Trains rattle the ground. Construction crews jackhammer concrete. Storms roll in. Every sensor screamed, constantly lighting up with alerts that meant nothing. The real tunnels vanished inside the background hum of modern life. Engineers tweaked algorithms, filtered data, ran simulations. The results looked promising in labs and collapsed in the field. One geophysicist later admitted that months of analysis produced mountains of data and an unacceptable truth: the machines flagged tree roots, buried irrigation lines and boulders while missing the tunnels themselves. The more advanced the software became, the more convincing its mistakes looked. Homeland Security tried everything else: thermal imaging, electromagnetic scans, experimental microgravity sensors that measured subtle changes in Earth's density, robots, drones. Each new system arrived with hope and left with disappointment. Decades earlier, during the Vietnam War, U.S. forces had faced a similar dilemma against tunnel networks they couldn't reliably detect, eventually sending humans underground because technology failed. 30 years later, despite billions spent and exponential leaps in computing power, the conclusion was uncomfortably similar. A senior official would later state without exaggeration that every smuggling tunnel ever discovered on the southern border had been found not by sensors, but by informants, routine surveillance, or sheer luck. The most technologically sophisticated nation on Earth had a blind spot running straight beneath its feet. This wasn't just a technical failure, it was a psychological one. The assumption that enough innovation could make any threat visible collapsed underground. And as engineers searched for signals that weren't there, the cartels absorbed a quieter lesson. The deeper they went, the safer they became. Every tunnel discovery was supposed to end the problem. Instead, it became a lesson manual. Each time authorities poured concrete into a shaft and posed for photos, the cartels quietly took notes. What failed? What triggered suspicion? How deep was too shallow? How long was too short? The next tunnel always answered those questions. Depth increased first. What began as passages 10 or 20 feet underground sank to 60, then 70 feet, far below the reach of most sensors. Length followed. Short crossings turned into quarter-mile corridors, then half-mile stretches, then something closer to underground highways. Complexity exploded. Rope ladders gave way to steel staircases. Buckets became motorized carts. Candles and flashlights were replaced by full electrical systems running high-voltage cables along concrete walls. Ventilation ducts snaked for thousands of feet, pumping fresh air into spaces where oxygen would otherwise disappear. Drainage pumps hummed constantly, fighting groundwater seepage. These were no longer holes in the ground. They were industrial projects. The epicenter of this underground arms race became Otay Mesa, California, a landscape so ordinary it was invisible. Above ground, the area is a patchwork of warehouses, trucking yards, and loading docks where forklifts beep and diesel engines idle around the clock. Noise is constant. Movement is routine. A jackhammer doesn't draw attention. A dump truck hauling dirt looks like just another workday. Beneath that industrial camouflage lies soil that is almost perfect, firm enough to hold shape, soft enough to excavate by hand. Cartel crews could buy or rent warehouses on both sides of the border, line them up on a map, and start digging toward each other in secret. If caught, they lost a building and some equipment. If successful, they gained a private border crossing capable of moving tens of millions of dollars in product every month. By the late 2000s, the scale shocked even veteran investigators. One tunnel stretched more than 2,200 feet, reinforced with concrete and fitted with a rail cart system that ended inside a suburban kitchen. Another ran over 600 yards, complete with an elevator and wood-paneled flooring, its U.S. exit hidden inside a produce warehouse among crates of vegetables. Then came the tunnel that reset expectations entirely. Discovered in early 2020, it ran nearly 4,300 feet, almost 8/10 of a mile, descending 70 feet underground through multiple layers of earth. It featured a full industrial elevator capable of lowering heavy pallets, continuous LED lighting, powerful ventilation, and a rail system designed for sustained long-term use. It was not built for a quick score. It was built to operate for years. What haunted investigators most was how it was found. Not by radar, not by sensors. Someone talked. Had they stayed silent, the tunnel might still be active today. Mapping the passage revealed sealed side branches where plans had changed mid-dig, evidence that crews were adapting in real-time underground rerouting to avoid cameras or demolished buildings above. The realization settled in slowly and brutally. This was not a battle that escalated in bursts. It was a continuous evolution. Defense reacted, offense adapted. And in that imbalance lay the core truth of the conflict. Border security had to be everywhere all the time, while the cartels only needed one quiet stretch of dirt and enough patience to keep digging. By the time the tunnel arms race was fully underway, Washington believed it had found the answer not underground, but above it. The strategy was simple, politically powerful, and visually undeniable. Harden the surface until smuggling became impossible. Taller fences rose along the border. Steel barriers thickened, cameras multiplied, drones patrolled from the sky. Border Patrol numbers swelled into the tens of thousands. And on paper it worked. Above-ground crossings collapsed. Apprehension numbers fell to historic lows. Officials pointed to the walls and declared the border more secure than ever. But beneath that success story lay a contradiction few were willing to confront. Every new barrier increased the cost, risk, and unpredictability of moving drugs across open desert or through checkpoints. And as those traditional routes became harder, one alternative grew steadily more attractive. Tunneling didn't require bribing guards or gambling on patrol schedules. It didn't care about fences, cameras, or political speeches. It only required time, labor, and secrecy. From the cartel's perspective, the math was brutally clear. Digging a tunnel might cost $1 or $2 million. If it moved even a few tons of product, it paid for itself many times over. If it failed, it was written off as an operational loss. The profits from one successful tunnel could subsidize 10 failures. This asymmetry reshaped the conflict. The United States had to defend nearly 2,000 miles of border 24 hours a day above and below ground. The cartels only had to win once in one carefully chosen location for long enough to make the investment worthwhile. By fortifying the surface, the U.S. unintentionally pushed the most sophisticated traffickers toward the underground option, the one least visible and hardest to police. It was a classic case of unintended consequences. Walls designed to stop smuggling didn't eliminate it, they refined it. Between 2007 and 2011, authorities discovered more tunnels than in the previous 2 decades, combined a surge that tracked almost perfectly with expanded fencing and patrols. Each barrier poured above ground acted like pressure on a sealed system, forcing movement to the weakest point. And underground, that pressure found release. What looked like victory from a distance masked a deeper shift in strategy. Smuggling hadn't been defeated. It had been engineered into a form that thrived precisely because the surface had become hostile. The walls didn't end the problem. They quietly taught it how to evolve. 3 decades after that pool table rose from the floor in Agua Prieta, the lesson it revealed has only grown more uncomfortable. The U.S.-Mexico border is no longer just a line on a map or a wall on the horizon. It is a volume, a 3-dimensional space stretching above ground and deep below it, where power money and human ingenuity collide. More than 180 cross-border tunnels have been discovered since 1990, and no serious official claims to know how many remain hidden. Each filled shaft, each collapsed passage is treated as a win, yet everyone also confirms the same truth: detection comes late after the investment has already been made and the lesson absorbed. Laws have changed. Building an illicit tunnel now carries prison sentences of up to 20 years. Specialized tunnel task forces operate along the border. Modern tunnel rats train with robots, fiber optic cameras, and air quality sensors, crawling through narrow concrete corridors that feel less like crime scenes and more like industrial ruins. And still, the imbalance persists. The cartels can spend years quietly carving through earth, adapting in real time, sealing dead ends, extending routes when conditions above shift. The state must monitor everything everywhere indefinitely. The human cost remains largely invisible. Tunnel laborers work under armed supervision, coerced by debt fear or force. Some are compelled to dig tunnel after tunnel. Some vanish when the work is done. Walking through a seized passageway means walking through evidence not just of smuggling, but of exploitation and silent violence. And beneath it all lies the engine that never shuts off demand. As long as the American appetite for cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin, and fentanyl remains, vast supply will find a path by boat, by drone, by plane, or by dirt and concrete. Tunnels strike a nerve because they feel like a direct insult to sovereignty, a reminder that static defenses are temporary illusions. History offers no comfort here. Every wall ever built has eventually been bypassed, flanked, or undermined. The Agua Prieta tunnel did not just move drugs, it moved the goalposts. It forced a reckoning with the limits of technology, the fragility of control, and the reality that offense only needs patience. Somewhere even now, the earth may be vibrating faintly with unseen work. The wall stands in the sun. Below it, the ground keeps its secrets and waits. In the end, the story of the tunnels isn't really about concrete technology or even drugs. It's about a deeper truth Americans have faced again and again. Systems adapt faster than symbols. Walls look strong. Numbers look reassuring. But when pressure builds, ingenuity finds another route, often where no one is looking. The tunnels remind us that security, like success, can never be static. It has to be rethought constantly, with humility about what we don't see and honesty about the forces we create. They also force an uncomfortable question: how much of this underground war is driven not by criminals alone, but by demand incentives and blind faith in simple solutions to complex problems? If there's a lesson here, it's this: real resilience doesn't come from higher barriers, but from understanding systems as they actually are, not as we wish them to be. If this story made you think differently about borders, power, or human ingenuity, help it reach others. Like the video, share it with someone who values deep analysis, and subscribe for more investigative stories that go beneath the surface.